talked about how it takes a different level to play and win at this level. It takes a special type of player. A lot of talk about championship DNA. What specifically does it take to have as much success as you guys have had at this level and continue to make it back here?
I think egos, keeping your egos in check. I think a lot of teams get in these positions and, you get to the space like, oh, it's me more than this guy, or it's that more than this guy, or I should be getting more shots, or I should be getting more attention. And I think that's a huge part of it, and just understanding the pecking order and respecting the pecking order. Not getting so caught up in what's in it for you. What's ultimately in it for you is winning. And when you win, everyone wins. Everybody eats, as we like to say. So I think that's a very important part of it. And then, obviously, staying hungry. You kind of get into these laws at times. The regular season gets boring, and, you go through the regular season and it's boring, and you stop getting better, and it catches up to you in the end. And so just really embracing and appreciating each process for what it is, because every year is its own year, it's its own journey, and appreciating that journey and actually going through it, not doing all you can to get around it, thinking, oh, man, we'll just get back there. Just appreciating that journey and actually putting yourself in it and going through it, feeling the ups, feeling the downs, and then ultimately, it takes some extreme competitors. I think our coaching staff is extremely competitive. The players are extremely competitive. Our front office is extremely competitive. Joe Lacob is probably the most competitive guy around, and so I think that's a huge part of it as well, just that will to win.
Chris in the middle.
Draymond, as someone that plays defense the way you do, what do you respect or admire about the way Boston defends?
You respect and admire that everyone is defending. There's not a guy who comes on the floor that isn't giving 110% on that side of the ball, and you have to, give a lot of respect to Ime. That's not a much different squad than we've seen the past few years, or at least 2 years or 3 since Kyrie left. It's not a much different team, yet more has been required of them, and they've answered that bell. And so you have to give a lot of credit to him. You have to give a lot of credit to Marcus Smart, who is their leader on that side of the ball. But I think, in order to have everyone come in and play, there has to be some leadership there that's holding that all together, that's holding somebody responsible. And to me, I think that's Marcus Smart. And I think, that plays a huge role in it. But I appreciate that more than anything.
Second row on your left.
Hey, Draymond, Bobby Manning. To that point on Marcus Smart, Steve kind of compared you two. I'm not going to ask you to compare you and him, but just what do you think he does that you do as a player too that makes you two of the most dominant defenders in the league here?
I think he really thinks the game. You can see it, just the way he plays. The way he's teaching guys, the way he's commanding attention in huddles, and going through the X's and O's and huddles, like you see it all. I think he does a great job of that. Marcus Smart, I think, and I've been speaking on this a lot, I think people tend to forget Marcus Smart's his number one attribute or positive on him coming out of the draft was his leadership, and that he's a winner and a true point guard. And the qualities that he has, especially on that side of the ball, are those of a leader. Are those, when you see him with the X's and O's and teaching, are those of a point guard. And so, I think he's continued to grow into his leadership. I think, there were times earlier in his career where most people wouldn't know how to handle it. And so then you end up getting a bad rap, and it's like, oh, this guy's doing too much of this, he's doing too much of that. He's continued to grow into the leader that he's become, and it's been really good to watch.
Gary?
Draymond, everybody, you've won championships. The Warriors are the model franchise in the NBA and probably professional sports, but it wasn't always like that. What was your impression of Golden State when they drafted you? What did you know about the organization? Did you know they played in Oakland? What did you know about Golden State when you got here?
I mean, I knew they played in Oakland because I came and did a pre-draft workout. But before that, I didn't know much. I knew they had won 23 games the year before, and it's kind of the laughing stock of the NBA. But I also knew that they had two guys who could really shoot the lights out of the ball, and that, you know, it was a young group that was looking to build. Joe Lacob had just bought the team a year before. Joe Lacob and Peter Guber and the entire group. They had just purchased the team. Mark Jackson had just came in. Bob had just taken over as general manager. And you just knew, like, it was a team that was hungry, an organization that was hungry and trying to go. And that was the mindset from day one, walking in here. Everybody's like, man, we were the worst. We were last-ranked defense in the league. We won 23 games. We've been to the playoffs one time. And I mean, at that point, it was 11 years, 10 or 11 years or something like that, maybe a little more. That was kind of the aura that was around. And, we just came in hungry and wanted to change that. And we did. But, it wasn't always this. I remember walking downtown Oakland giving away tickets to the game as a rookie for one of our little team activations or community things that you have to do. And like, certain guys had to go on the BART and give tickets away. Like, I remember that. It wasn't that long ago. And so a much less respected franchise, but we're able to change that. And, that's what it's about.
Last two here in the front.
Hey, Draymond, yesterday you were talking about how one of the biggest differences that you see between your early finals runs and this year was that earlier on you guys were the young players. Now you are the leaders teaching young players. Over the past 3 years in particular, as you guys went through a 15-win season, as you're playing with 19-year-olds and other stuff, how have you as a leader changed or grown?
I think I've just grown in understanding, that the 19-year-olds of today are not the 19-year-olds when I was 19. Totally different generations. And then in saying that, I could have just been a 19-year-old that didn't understand other 19-year-olds. But when I look back on it now, it's a totally different world we live in from the year that Jonathan Kuminga's 19 years old as opposed to the year I was 19 years old. And you end up having to learn their generation because you just can't lead them the same way you can lead someone that's kind of our generation. And you figure out what buttons to press and, like, how do you get to them and, how to treat them and what's the best way. Like I said a couple weeks ago, like I learned to treat or look at him more as a son than a brother. And that's just all a part of the growth, right? Like, you're trying to relate to these guys and, like, hey, man, I'm going to go do this. Like, you should come do this with me. And it's not what they really want to do. And ultimately learning, like, he doesn't hate me, but I'm 32, he's 19, and what I like to do may just not be cool to him. Like, I was talking to Travis Walton, who's a brother of mine, but obviously trains me. And he was like, yo, what's your relationship with Jonathan Kuminga? And this was beginning of the year. And I said, Trav, honestly, every time he see me, when he walked by, he just start laughing. And Trav's like, why? He's laughing. And I was like, I don't really know why. And Trav's like, oh, he think you funny. And I was like, I don't necessarily think he's thinks I'm funny. I think he's laughing at me. And he's like, well, why is he laughing at you? And I said, well, imagine when you see one of the old heads doing something. If you see an OG old head doing something, you're going to laugh and be like, all right, I see you, OG. And you're really laughing at the fact that, like, that's so old school that it's funny. That's how I feel like he was looking at me. Like, dude, you just old, you move old, you look old. Like, but honestly, that was a part of the growth and understanding him. I'm like, okay, he look at me like I might look at a 55-year-old man that got on his, his gears, get up and he moved. That's how he's looking at me. And that helped me further understand how I need to relate to him. And so it's just been a process of figuring it out and ups and downs, frustration, and, you know, talking yourself back and talking to other people and talking to Andre and talking to Sean and figuring out how did you do it. And, you know, it's something that you have to want to do, though, because it's a totally different job.
Monty, last question.
I mean, you mentioned a minute ago about how you guys don't let egos get in the way of what you try to do, the end goal. How much does Steph set much of a tone in that regard? I mean, what's his impact in that regard?
He sets a huge tone in that regard because he's never going to approach you like, hey, you're supposed to look at me this way, which in turn you end up looking at him more that way, as opposed to a guy who's like, oh, no, you're like, like, out of here, bro. I have to look at you like that. And then, you know, it's like a domino effect. But I think when your leader, when the face of your franchise is that way, you have no choice but to be that way. What's your ego compared to his? Like, why would any of us care if you have an ego and he doesn't? And so I think it definitely sets a tone, not for only players, but for everyone in this organization and how everyone operates. It's like, it's not, it's, you know, there's open door policies. There's, you know, we put our brain together and try to figure out solutions because ultimately the guy who's leading the charge on all of this, he's that way. And there's no right for anyone else to be that way.
Thank you, Draymond.
That's Draymond Green, AG.